Today I'd like to highlight one of the benefits of being a member of the Good Shepherd's flock. And to do that, I want to tell a story that will seem totally unrelated to the day's theme until I get to the end of the sermon. So, cut me a little slack, bear with me for a few moments. There were a comedy duo, writers out in Hollywood, who were working together on a new sitcom. They finally pulled off what it takes to put forth a pilot episode of their new sitcom. They filmed it in front of a live studio audience, and then they took that recording and presented it to the execs at whatever studio, I don't recall which. They waited with bated breath to see what the execs would say about their work. And finally, they got the phone call. The exec said in that smooth Hollywood style, "Hey, I got to tell you, we really appreciate the work that you guys put into this. As we look at this, we really think it's got some potential. We want to compliment you on what you've pulled off. You got a bright future coming ahead. Oh, this is great for you." And the comedy writers had been in Hollywood long enough to know that they should try to get off the phone as quickly as possible, because normally after the very nice compliment that the execs give you, they zing you with some sort of criticism. And sure enough, just before the comedian was able to put down the phone, the exec said, just one more thing. We think you should add a laugh track to your pilot. Of course, the comedy writers were like, laugh track. That's so awful. It's so fake. Everybody knows it's so fake. It's canned laughter. It doesn't work. But I suppose if we want to get this thing greenlit, we should at least try to add it and see what happens, if for no other reason than to show the execs that it ain't going to work. So they took that pilot episode, they put a laugh track against it, they brought in some test groups to watch the episode, and when you go in to be that screening audience for something like a pilot episode of a sitcom, you have these little dials that go positive and negative. And if you are laughing or you're feeling strong emotion in an appropriate way, you turn it up really positive. And if it's sort of boring and just leaving you whatever, then you turn it negative. And that's how they gauge whether this is the kind of product that the studio is going to want to put forward. So they put that first test group in front of the pilot episode. They show the pilot episode with the laugh track. And my goodness, they are just turning it up all the way, all the time. Laughing, they're getting the jokes. They're getting the jokes in a timely fashion. It is great. You should know the point of this sermon is not that I'm suggesting that we add those dials to our service here. I don't think we would survive that one, so just take what the Spirit gives you. They bring in the next test audience, and the comedians who wrote the sitcom decided what they would try is they would try to show the version without the laugh track, just to see what had happened. Because if it's that funny, then it ought to still be that funny without the laugh track. So they get underway, and people are laughing, people are enjoying, people are moving the dial in the positive direction, but not nearly as much as they did when they had the laugh track, the previous focus group. It was surprising to the two guys that wrote that comedy, and so they brought in a few more focus groups. They did a couple audiences with the laugh track, they did a couple audiences without the laugh track, and with unbelievable consistency, the audience that had the corny laugh track underneath the action of that pilot episode, responded more positively than the folks who didn't have the cue of the laugh track for the moment. So they decided to greenlight the series with the darn corny, old-fashioned laugh track. I'm going to come back to that story to talk to you about one of the benefits of being a member of the flock of Jesus that we don't always appreciate. But first, let's talk about some of the benefits that are described in today's gospel. In today's gospel, Jesus doesn't actually set himself forth as the good shepherd. That comes, we'll hear that passage next year, just a few verses after this first third of Jesus' sermon in the Gospel of John chapter 10. Jesus instead refers to himself as the gate, and I'll get to that in a few moments with this photo. But first, the Good Shepherd. We love to think of God in Christ through the Spirit as our Good Shepherd. That is ingrained in us from our memorization of Psalm 23. He leads me along right pathways for his name's sake. He guides me through the valley of the shadow of death, and I shall fear no evil. As the Christian family, we have loved those words and the sense that God in Christ through the Spirit is our good shepherd, guiding us with God's rod and God's staff. We love the idea of a good shepherd who guides us. In today's passage, Jesus actually he talks about a shepherd a lot, talks about a good shepherd, but he actually says, I am the gate. And just so you know, he's basically saying the same thing as saying, I am the good shepherd. Look at this shepherd standing in the space between the sheep pen and the rest of the world. There you can see, it's not that Jesus is saying, I am this inanimate object with a latch on me that swings back and forth. It's not that kind of gate. It is that in his role as our shepherd, he puts his own body between us and the rest of the world for protection. And this is an important thing that this gospel lifts up this morning, that in his ministry to us as the gate, the shepherd who is the gate, he protects us. In this sorry state of a world, there are all sorts of people out there who are looking to steal you, the sheep of God's flock. And just like what you would do when you steal your neighbor's sheep, you're going to find some way to consume it or to commodify it, make it profitable. And we live in a sin-sick world that is looking to steal you out of a place where you understand that you were created in God's image, that you are beloved by God forever. They want to steal you away from that confidence, and they want to find a way to either devour you or to commodify you, or both. They want to make you feel like the way you look isn't good enough. So if you just come by that product, it'll fix it all. It just takes that shade of lipstick. It just takes that little bit of zhuzh. I don't know what to describe it as. I'm reaching the point in my life where I am long past the power of zhuzh. So I don't know what it is, but can you see they're playing on our human insecurities to try to devour you enough, your sense of self enough, that they can make money off of you. And outside the reign of God in the church, as pessimistic and cynical as this sounds, there are gobs of people who are looking to turn you just into a voter in a gerrymandered district, just into a consumer who is fooled into buying products that you do not need, just into some ball of insecurities that is waiting to be turned into profit. And that is absolutely contradictory to your identity as someone who from before your birth was lovable enough that God would die for you. Don't believe all of that. They are the false shepherds. They're jumping over the wall of the sheep pen. They're coming in to steal you away from that safety. They're looking to do it because they want to devour you. They want to turn you into a profit for them. Don't go for it. Listen to the shepherd. And then one last blessing. And this gets back to that story I told at the beginning. I have been noticing over the last few weeks, couple months, that our congregation is gaining momentum, and there's lots of special moments that are starting to show up in our worship life together. There's baptisms, there are affirmations of baptisms, there are first communions, there are milestone happy birthdays, there are all of these things that are popping up, and those are just the ceremonial moments. There are all sorts of joys that are being shared among the family of God. And this would be my pitch to you about one of the positive blessings of being a member of the Good Shepherd's flock. It isn't just about guidance out in your daily life, guidance for this congregation. It isn't just about resisting the temptation to have yourself devoured by the forces of this world and turned into a battery for profit. There's something more. There's something about enjoyment. There's something about abundance that comes from living together in a small community. If your community is too small, you miss out. If your community is too big, you miss out. We are hardwired for a certain size of social life, a certain capacity for life in a spiritual village. And that's where the laugh track comes in. You would think, as baptized children of God, that we would be able to look at our lives and appreciate the blessings God has shared with us all on our own. We ought to be able to laugh when we are living in abundant victory. We ought to be able to cry when we are feeling pain and lamenting before God. But there is something about being on your own that numbs you. And what this sometimes silly, sometimes old-fashioned, sometimes corny experience of religious life lived in community can do is it helps you to appreciate the cues God is sending you to appreciate your blessings and to reach out to God in the midst of your woes. You might think, oh, I appreciate my blessings. But there's something magical that happens. We're going to see that again today. I want you to think about our president, not the president of the United States, I'm sorry. Our president, Janet Swarstad. We all know Janet. Janet is a very busy bee here on Sunday mornings. And today, at the beginning of our communion rite, her grandson is going to be receiving his first communion. And in our atomistic, individualistic society, where we turn the sacraments into personal magic instead of communal power, we might be like, well, you know, Ryan could just take communion over to the house and share it with them, and that would be special. But there's something about you joining in that family's joy that makes their joy even greater. That is the power of community. Whether you realize it or not, you need this laugh track. You need it so that you can be a member of the kind of flock where you are valued, a member of the kind of flock where you have your insides cultivated for what Jesus, the Good Shepherd, the gate, tells us is ours at the end of this reading. He said that you should have abundant life. And I'll tell you, that abundance isn't money, it isn't beauty, it isn't power, it isn't success. It is real life lived in authentic community. This is the foretaste of the feast that is to come.